Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first breakout session of the Red Cedar Conference. We're going to have some other sessions going on at the same time as this one, and will be followed by a short break, and then there will be another keynote presentation coming up in an hour, and more presentations after lunch this afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us for the Red Cedar portion of Water Week. My name is Zerr. I am a natural resource educator with UW Extension. I am also on the planning committee for the Red Cedar Conference, and we're so glad that we were able to make this work. Last year's Red Cedar Conference was one of the last events held in person in Wisconsin. It was on a Thursday, and the next Monday everything was locked down. So we were able to get it done last year at University of Wisconsin-Stout, where we usually hold this conference, but we are virtual this year, and glad you could join us, and glad we could make it work. So we're going to have a presentation this morning about the Red Cedar Basin Assessment for Water Quality Improvement Project, and helping us present in this regard, doing most of the presenting. I'll be talking a little bit about this project because I was kind of peripherally involved in some of getting it organized. But our presenter this morning is Landon Profaizer. Landon is an associate planner for the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Prior to that position, he worked as a regional planner for the Bear River Association of Governments based in Logan, Utah, and has also worked in both public and private sector positions in planning, archaeology, geographic information systems, and graphic design. Landon holds a Master's of Science in Bioregional Planning from Utah State and a Bachelor of Science degree in anthropology. And I can also say that Landon is a very talented musician too. So I'm going to turn this over to Landon for the opening, and I'll be back to talk about a few things along with the project as well. Thanks, Landon.
All right, great. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. So as Dan mentioned, I'm a planner with West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. So one of several RPCs throughout the state. Our region covers seven counties in West Central Wisconsin. So starting over at the Wisconsin western border, we have Polk and St. Croix counties, then Barron and Dunn County, Eau Claire and Chippewa County, and then Clark County to our east. So pretty broad geographic area that we cover. So we just provide planning and technical assistance in those counties and in those communities. As you know, a lot of rural areas that don't have planning staff or technical expertise. And so if we have that in-house, we help that out with that. Or if not, then we, similar to this project, then we find those specialists or resource professionals and get people together or get creative with funding. And so we'll kind of talk about all that today. So I recognize I have a unique challenge with this presentation and this content because it does involve so many partners with highly specialized backgrounds, and their contributions were very specific and specialized throughout this project. And so again, we're just because our organization was a coordinator for this project, really it made most sense for me to kind of provide the overview, because we decided later on in the project that it was important to come up with a kind of a summary report that was more easily digestible by the public, was more graphical and visual, and just really encouraged people to go to these technical resource documents that were produced by our project partners for more detailed information and more of, I guess, the science of some of that research. And so, again, I just want to provide an overview of, who are the players, who are the partners, what were their roles, what were the objectives of this project, and what were some of the findings and outcomes, really high level, that we discovered, and then hopefully encourage folks to go find those reports. And so throughout this, I'll also be sure to mention where you can find all this information online, as we host it on our website at Regional Planning. So I'll make sure that folks know where to find that. So again, this was a really large project, scope and scale. I started at Regional Planning in 2015 and then kind of jumped on board this project in 2016, shortly after it started. So there's a lot of history with this, a lot of work that was done previously, a long effort to get, the scope aligned and the funding sources lined up before my time. And so I kind of came into this as it was already getting started. And so it was a 4-year project. It covered a watershed of roughly 1,900 square miles. The total cost was around $600,000. And then we had our 8 major project partners. So this slide here on the left kind of shows a map of the the watershed. So as I mentioned, our jurisdiction includes Barron and Dunn counties. And so you can see there a bulk of the watershed is within those two counties, but then it also kind of picks up other counties on the fringe that are out of our jurisdiction, but a bulk of it is within our jurisdiction. So again, it makes sense that we kind of help coordinate this effort and maybe step in where we can as project administrators in that regard. So on the right, you'll see all the different project partners. I mentioned that there were 8 major partners. So UW Stout was a major partner, and then we list out here some of their contributions. So again, really responsible for the social work, social research, economic research, and then also a division of the Discovery Center, their Limnological Research Center. Dr. Bill James, who's I guess semi-retired. I'm not sure his status. I still get emails, so he's involved somewhat, but really responsible for the limnological analysis. And then we had U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, their St. Paul district. And so I found out throughout this project that we did not get a grant from them because they don't like that. That's kind of a 4-letter word for Army Corps, but they provided technical assistance through what's called Section 22, a Section 22 funding agreement. And so they prefer to do the work in-house when you partner with Army Corps if they have that expertise, and if not, and they need to contract out that work out, they'll do so. And so again, they were one of our bigger contributors for this project, contributing half of that $600,000 overall project cost. And then Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, we were able to obtain a WDNR lake protection grant for $200,000 that covered a significant portion of the expenditures for the project. And then we have Dan here from the Division of Extension. Anybody who works in this region in water quality knows what an asset and resource Dan is. And so it just naturally makes sense that he would be involved with this project and contribute his expertise and knowledge and resources. And then moving up to the top right, we have the Tanner-Monoman Lake Improvement Association. And so as Dan mentioned, the Red Cedar Conference occurs every year in March. And that's hosted and kind of organized by that Lake Association group. And there's significant expenditures that go along with that. So, trying to get creative on how to come up with match funding for this project, that made perfect sense. They're a non-government agency, so their expenditures and resources could be used to match any state or federal funding that we may receive. And so, but then also it's a venue that we can share this information and do outreach on the work that we're doing and then some of the findings and then the work moving forward. So again, just a natural partner in all of this. And then lastly, we had our 2 county land and water conservation divisions in both Barron and Dunn County, who were significant contributors to this project through, staff time and expertise out in the field doing all kinds of projects. But we'll get into some of those details later. And then just, as I mentioned before, regional planning, really just coordinating, making sure, the work's happening within the timeline and that we're meeting all of our projected deadlines and that the budget's, appropriate, adequate, or spending what we agreed to in the way that we agreed to. And so just really managing the overall project logistics. So for the project goal here, so I just wanted to share this. This was in the original proposal that was submitted to the different funding entities. So the goal of the Red Cedar Assessment for Water Quality Improvement is to better understand the barriers that prevent or discourage landowner participation in practices and management that benefit water quality, and to identify ways to overcome those barriers in a way that increases public participation and leads to improved water quality. And then additionally, the project was meant to be used to inform the triennial update of the Red Cedar Watershed 9 Key Element Plan. A river runs through us, a water quality strategy for the land and waters of the Red Cedar River Basin. And then also, which Dan will probably talk about, any updates necessary as part of a TMDL that was established in this area. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Dan to really provide a background of what kind of brought us up to commencing this project, the purpose for doing that, and then maybe how some of those goals and objectives were established to do this work. So.
All right, thanks, Landon. Yeah, and as Landon said, West Central Regional Planning is in a unique position to help out with projects like this. I can't express enough gratitude to having them as a resource and having Landon as a resource. Anytime you're working in large watersheds where the watershed is sprawling over political boundaries, county boundaries, city boundaries, and you want to have a unified financial effort, some unified resources, financial resources to help you do the kind of work you want to do, it's kind of burdensome to ask one county or one municipality to manage that money when some of that money is going to those other political entities. So having an organization like West Central Regional Planning able to kind of be the hub of the financial work saves those counties a lot of issues, makes it possible for all the counties and all the municipalities who are involved to be involved. So a lot of gratitude to Landon for and the staff at West Central Planning for helping us out with that aspect of this project, and also too the Red Cedar River Water Quality Partnership, which I facilitate, basically kind of brought the parties together to start making this happen in the first place. A big shout out to Buzz Sorge. Many of you might know Buzz, retired from DNR. Basically kind of brought the Corps of Engineers into this, and we all started talking about what we wanted to do and how we were going to coordinate all of the different resources. And that's when we went to regional planning and brought them on board. So a little background information on the Red Cedar watershed. You probably, if you're here, you probably know a little bit about the Red Cedar watershed. Covers most of Barron and Dunn counties and parts of 6 or 7 other counties. You can see on the map there a little bit of Rusk, Washburn, Sawyer, Chippewa, St. Croix, and a lot of area, about 1,900 square miles. A good bit of it is agricultural land. On the map, yellow is cropland. The orange is pasture land, which alternates. Some years it's hay or alfalfa, and the next year it might be corn. So all totaled, about 45% of the watershed is used for agricultural land. And most of the data that we've been using to understand water quality issues in this watershed is almost 30 years old. It goes back to the early 90s. So one of the things that we needed was some new data. We do know that the majority of the phosphorus issues that we have that cause the algae blooms, cause bad water quality in this watershed, 66% of that phosphorus is coming from ag land. And that 90s data that we have led to the TMDL, the total maximum daily load that was developed. And that total maximum daily load basically says we need to decrease the phosphorus inputs to the river system by about 300,000 pounds per year if we want to get fewer algae blooms in the especially in the lakes, but in the rivers as well, in the watershed, fewer algae blooms and less intense when they do occur. So we've got a ways to go to get to 300,000 pound reduction. Go ahead, next slide. Landon touched on this a little bit. The project, Red Cedar Basin Assessment for Water Quality Improvement Project, has several goals, and the goals were based on the needs that the partnership came up with. We needed more up-to-date data about water quality and the sources of the pollutant load. Like I said, the stuff that we were working with was from the early 90s. It was only 2 years of monitoring in the early 90s, and we've been basing everything on that. So we were hoping to get some new data out of this project. We also needed more information about the people in the watershed. We had done a little bit of survey work previously, but more information about people's attitudes toward change, about how they're networking with each other, about how they cooperate and trust each other, especially out in the rural areas, to help us be able to target efforts a little bit better, to get a better understanding of what people think about water quality, what they think about land management, and how they cooperate and who they trust. And further outreach, of course, is important in any of these kinds of projects. So that's a part of this project too, is the information and education and outreach elements. So we have a plan in place, a 10-year plan that was written. It was written 6 years ago in 2015. It was approved in 2016 by EPA and DNR, again, based on all of that old data. So one of the things that we wanted was we built into this plan that we would update it, not completely update it, but we would modify it every 3 years during the plan with whatever new information came in. And then at the end of 10 years, a new plan would come in and take its place. So we needed some more information to feed into this plan to give us what we needed to know. According to the old data, it's a little hard to see some of those numbers in that chart on the left, but according to the old data, we made some estimates about what kind of load reduction of phosphorus we could get from different land management practices, no-till farming, manure storage, nutrient management, cover crops, all the way down to wetland restorations and other things. And in the 10-year plan, we didn't target the whole 300,000 pounds. We're not going to be able to do that in 10 years. But we came up with a smaller estimate, about 45% of the goal, somewhere around 200,000 pounds. We thought maybe we could pull off in 10 years' time. So the information gathered from this project will feed into modifying what you see in that table in terms of load reduction numbers that we need. Some of the information already says that 300,000 pound total reduction is not necessary. That Bill James's modeling or monitoring work said that it would be a little bit less than that. So that's good to hear that progress from that 300,000 has already taken us down a little bit. Next slide. And I'll turn it back over to Landon to talk a little bit more about the report and the findings.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so I felt like it was important to provide that background just to bring us to where we're at the start of this project. And this slide here, so I'm showing the table of contents of the summary document that we developed, because earlier on I referenced that there were several specialist reports that were developed by individual project partners throughout this effort. And so I just wanted to highlight where those can be found. So if you go to our website at www.wcwrpc.org, if you're on the home page, there's tabs along the top. One of those tabs is a documents tab, and we are going to host those documents there for the time being, probably for quite some time. So that will always be available to folks who want to go back there and reference those documents. So there we have our summary report that was produced. Again, just highlights of the project and some of the findings, but then we list each of those specialist reports individually and refer to them as addendum, because in this summary report, we wanted it to be able to be sent out easily, give people a quick taste of the work that was done, give them an idea of the depth and scale of everything, but not provide all of the technical information, because then the document would get so large and out of hand to be able to send around easily. So we referred to those specialist reports as addendum. And so again, those are hosted on our website. And as I go through, I'm going to be highlighting findings from many of these studies, but if you have technical questions or anything specific, that's where you're probably going to likely find the answer to some of those questions. So as the project came together in the proposal, there were three main objectives that kind of surfaced throughout this, as far as how to characterize and categorize each of the tasks for the project. So objective 1 was conducting socio-economic research analysis. Objective 2 was to conduct water quality analysis and monitoring. As Dan mentioned, that was very dated, back to the 90s, and so there was a need and demand for new, better data as far as water sampling, water quality sampling. And then objective 3 was, okay, now with all this information, is it possible to conduct project outreach? And then also, that somebody needed to coordinate this effort. As Dan mentioned, many times it just makes sense that regional planning coordinates these. It's something we do a lot, and because it covers so many jurisdictional boundaries, it's kind of a natural fit for us to take on that task of coordination. So with each of the three objectives, we broke it into specific tasks, and this is how we kind of organized this summary report. And so task 1 was really the social analysis of the Red Cedar Basin. So again, completed by our project partners, UW Stout. And then the economic impact of the water quality in the Red Cedar watershed, again, Stout, and then community capacity, which was also UW Stout. And I just want to sidebar here. So a unique aspect about this project with Stout is that they also have a separate National Science Foundation grant that funds a summer program there at their campus or in Menominee called the Lakes RAU program. So it's Lakes, and then RAU stands for Research Experiences for Undergraduates. And so really that's a summer program. Students apply to this and they select a certain number of students to come and do research about phosphorus pollution and solutions to the issues of water quality. And so students that participate come for 2 months in the summer. They spend the time there in Menominee. They train under research mentors with, well, that are highly interdisciplinary. So it could be, mentors in biology, it could be sociology, it could be economics, anthropology, geography, geology. And so what's really great about their contribution to this project is they're able to have that separate program where they're doing a lot of this research with students who can focus on these uh, in a very particular way. They can come up with ways of doing survey work or engaging landowners or the community. And then they leverage that to feed into this larger project. And so it was a really unique kind of treasure trove of information and resources to feed into this objective one of this project. And then objective 2, we have tasks 4 through 6. So this gets into the really detailed water quality sampling and analysis done by Dr. William James that was at Stout, the Discovery Center there, and then also Army Corps of Engineers. They themselves did a lot of this work as far as the monitoring, but then also contracted out some of that to Bill because he was already in the waters, at those sampling sites, collecting work that they would need to feed into their own models. And so, so that again naturally formed objective 2, and then we have objective 3. Those last 3 tasks, 7 through 9. So you have the Red Cedar Watershed Conference where we can conduct outreach, progress as this project was taking place, and then work with our land conservation divisions on work that they were doing with their, be it demo farms or like Dunn County got a no-till drill, and so they were conducting trainings on how to use that equipment, and again, so we could leverage those hours of staff spending time with farmers or landowners or students, anybody really, to educate them on best management practices related to this study, and what Dan mentioned, was found in that 9 key element plan of best management practices to help meet those goals for phosphorus reduction. And then task 9 was just our project coordination, and at the end I'll show kind of a breakdown of how everyone was involved with different components and the funding details of how it all came together. And so I realize these next slides are really busy, but what I wanted to do was pull the spreads directly from the summary report. And so this is kind of how we laid out each task in that summary report. So really just providing a brief description of that task, some of the recommendations that were that came out of those technical reports that are again found at our website. And I'll share that again at the end of where to get to that. But again, we could spend a whole presentation on just any one of these individual tasks presenting our partner work, but it was really just a summary of each of the tasks. So this was a summary of the social analysis work that was done. So again, looking at, okay, where do people have strong connections to other farmers or resource professionals in their network? Who do people trust? Where do people get information? So again, really diving into that, the social background of the watershed, and then you can see some of those recommendations there. So again, it just helps agencies know, what the recommendations are from the social research of how to engage people, how do you build trust, how do you get people involved who are maybe disconnected throughout the watershed, and how do you engage them and present information in a way that they will trust and find useful and valuable. As far as economic impact analysis, so again, this was UW Stout, and included in that full report at the end, addendum 1. So again, they looked at, worked with student researchers and also staff researchers to assess really the economic impact of poor water quality, or the other side of that, could you model economic gains or benefits from improving the water quality. So in the lower left, you kind of see they did this study about trying to establish what they called was lake premium. So it was, can you identify the value increase for a home if it's on a lake versus, a similar build that is not on a lake? Is there a lake premium? Is there a value from having a home on the lake? And that initial research kind of shows that there is what they call a lake premium, that, the same house built on a lake and, has an added value for being on that lake. But in the same regard, if the water quality isn't pristine, then, would that have a negative economic impact? And so again, attempting to model some of those questions and scenarios. And then in the upper right, they did build some of these scenarios where, they were looking at and surveying and talking with people about how they recreate and how they spend time. And when you're looking at this as in the lens of water quality, you know that people, as was shown through some of the survey work, that people, if the water has poor water quality, they're going to go somewhere else that has better water quality. And so that people indicated that in a survey form. And so then you can kind of plug in these estimates. Okay, well, what are the impacts and jobs lost then if tourism goes somewhere else, leaves a community and goes to one that has more favorable water quality? And then what does that do for, labor income and then total added value? And then, then they built these different scenarios to say, okay, well, if we improve the water quality, then, okay, what would that relationship be economically? Could we show that there would be an increase in jobs and added value to the community through tax revenue and whatnot? And so again, that detailed report will outline, their methodology for that and the findings for that to show economic benefit of water quality improvement. And then in the lower left, just the Secchi disc study that was done. So that's just a little round disc that's dropped down into the water, and then you kind of measure at what depth it's no longer visible. And so this research project attempted to look at, okay, well, is there a way to quantify that value of improving water clarity? And so they attempted to do that and model that. So in this report, you'll find that information as well. Community capacity. So I would say this is really the summary of tasks 1 through 3. And the easiest way to read this is with all the research and data that was collected, there was already this established, well-known rubric for how to organize the information that was gathered into these key model rating areas over here on the right that are in the different colors. And so you have the member area, the relational area, organizational, and then a programmatic. And so they really looked at the population in kind of 2 groups. You have kind of your general population, and then you have what they call the epistemic community. So the specialists or, the scientists in the community. So the general public is, maybe, doing, just living their lives, doing, farming or hobby farming or whatever, enjoying the watershed and its many attributes. But then you have the kind of scientific and specialist community that are really trying to well, how do we, in this case, how do we address water quality concerns and make improvements? And so it was really assessing community capacity for everyone and how to make improvements from a social standpoint. And so this table on the right really just kind of shows the rating and ranking that the research provided and showed you, okay, well, if you have a longer arrow, shooting over to the right, well, then that measures the strength that you have. So for instance, under the member rating, awareness and concern for issues is favorable throughout the watershed. But then, collective memory and vision, maybe, there needs to be work done there. Organizational is important because, these are the organizations that are on the ground doing the work. So again, you look to this rubric here to kind of, okay, well, where are our strengths in the community capacity model, but then also where are our weaknesses? So again, recommendations there down the center, but all this comes from that specialist report produced by UW Stout and its faculty and research students that worked on those projects. For task 4, we have the water quality analysis that was conducted by Dr. Bill James with Discovery Research Center at Stout. And so again, this gets into the technical component of this project that I don't have expertise in. It's outside my wheelhouse, but nonetheless, you can see on the map that he had several sampling sites throughout the watershed where conducted several years of water sampling and really looking at, an understanding and trying to understand soluble reactive phosphorus and total phosphorus going into the Lakes Tanner and Monoman. And then also, can we improve our understanding of the relationship between nitrogen and phosphorus loading and reservoir flushing and cyanobacterial blooms occurring? And then maybe could that help inform models that could forecast changes in the future? And then I know that there were some, things learned that point to more work needed in the future. For instance, throughout this project, it was above average as far as, they were above average wet years the whole time. There was no dry year in the mix. So, they mentioned that it was difficult to calibrate a model effectively that didn't include a dry year because it was all, again, above average conditions. And then also, Bill pointed out that, there is this relationship between the groundwater and phosphorus, and there needs to be a better understanding of the groundwater system and how that contributes phosphorus to the overall system that we're talking about here. And so again, pointing to additional research that could be done to help calibrate and refine these models. And so that's addendum number 2. So you could find that report with that title, with Bill James as the author on that one. Task number 5. So again, this is pretty technical. This was Army Corps of Engineers modeling work. They built what they called was a SQL W2 model. So again, it's looking at dynamic relationships using Bill James's water sampling data that he provided. Again, these are the different sections that they worked in along the watershed, connecting those 2 lakes. And so tried to really develop this model, taking inputs from, regarding temperature and water quality, different weather events, but then also looking at the dams and how they operate and moderate flow, inflow, outflow from dams. And so, again, one of the major, issues, I guess I'll say with this was that they indicated was this, higher than average, wet years that with no dry year, it was hard to calibrate a model that could really predict. And also, not having access to real-time information as far as, temperature, water quality, inflow, outflow. They indicated that, a potential future project could be to acquire some equipment that they could place throughout these different sections and have access to real-time monitoring data information that would really help inform and calibrate the model. Because for this, they really had to rely on, maybe someone else's weather station that only collected, weekly or monthly, or and then same thing with the dams. There wasn't a consistent format for receiving information from the different dams or different operators around those areas. And so work to be done there to improve that model, but nonetheless very valuable for this effort. And you can again read that full technical report. That's going to be addendum 3 in those links that I shared that are on our website. Task 6 was the ACPF analysis, so agricultural conservation planning framework. So this was really done by Army Corps of Engineers in-house there in their St. Paul District GIS Center. And so really, what this is just, it's a geospatial tool or GIS tool. It combines, different terrain, soils, so, physical aspects of the landscape, and then merges that with what we know about land use. So, okay, what are the crop practices on select parcels, and not just 1 year, but several years? Can you look at how that land is utilized for different practices? And then when you merge that with the physical characteristics, can we select for certain conservation practices that would benefit nearby waters? If we see that we know that there's a negative relationship between what's happening on the landscape around certain courses of water. And so these maps and models really just, they kick out these recommendations for select parcels that you can see in that center column. So number 3, suitable locations for edge of field bioreactors or drain water management or grassed waterways. And so again, based on the physical characteristics of the landscape and then what we know about land use practices, what could we recommend if we were concerned about conservation strategies? And then, we know that land conservation divisions are, they don't have a lot of staff to cover, these very large areas. So is this a way that, we could really help them pinpoint where, they could address or target areas for certain conservation practices or best management practices, and really make best use of their time to go to the critical areas where it's likely to have the most benefit throughout the watershed. And so this just gives a sampling of that. There were 2 sub watersheds that were chosen for their predicted, contribution in water quality throughout the system. And so they modeled those, but this is something that I know beyond this project that some of the counties are looking at doing on a county-wide level, again, just to help target areas, maybe for mailing or again, highly specialized practices that the land conservation divisions can go out and work on with landowners specifically. So
just a reminder, Landon, we've got 5 minutes. We do want to allow some time for questions. And folks, if you have questions, you can type them over into the Q&A that you see over to the right. So sorry.
Sure. Oh, no problem. Thanks, Dan. And so then these last tasks here. So these aren't really technical as far as information or analysis. These are really just, so again, the partner Tanner Monoman Lake Improvement Association we were able to leverage the conference and their expenditures as match for the project. And so we just highlight, some of those past conferences and some of the attendance, and you can kind of see in that graphic in the lower right, that there is increasing attendance from the farm and rural non-farm communities. And then we just show the distribution of attendees throughout the state. You can kind of see we have a good statewide coverage for those few areas that we mapped. And then lastly, we have our county conservation offices that I mentioned. So they were a significant partner throughout this. Again, they're the boots on the ground, the ones that are working with farmers, landowners, or different jurisdictions on, okay, here are certain practices that we know or we're trying to promote and that work, and engaging this information in the ACPF to target what control and what effort they want to invest in this. And so a lot of this work required a lot of data. And so I highlight the LiDAR data set that was needed to run a lot of the analysis for the SQL and the ACPF. And so the counties were fortunate to acquire that. It's very expensive if we had to do it on our own, but we could acquire it from them and utilize it for this project. And then this last, task 9 coordination is really just to give folks, an idea of how, it was really complex. There were a lot of partners, but here's how they kind of all contributed to these different tasks and the amount of money that we were talking about. And so I won't spend a lot of time on that. That's in the summary report. But just to conclude, so, what do we learn? I'll just kind of, I want to get to questions. So, we know that there are land management changes needed in the basin to improve water quality. The sociological data gives us a better understanding of, knowledge and attitudes among residents and landowners, and gives us some really targeted recommendations on how to improve relationships and network better. The economic studies help, provide metrics. Those numbers are useful when you're talking about, okay, what are some costs to make some of these improvements, and then and also the benefits of doing the work. And then the limnological analysis again just helps us further understand what's happening and where more work needs to be done. And again, I'll just refer you to those project reports. So they are on our website, wcwrpc.org, under our documents tab, and you can find all those reports with that detailed information there. So that's pretty much it, unless you have anything to add, Dan. I know you were heavily involved with this.
This is a very dense project. There were so many different elements to this, and if you want more information, I strongly suggest that you go. Do you have that website? Can you put up your website? Do you have that somewhere?
I could just shoot back to the. I'll just shoot back to the first.
Okay, yeah, because several
right
people
there.
are asking for that. So yeah, there's the link there, and so West Central Planning summarized this. I held it all together. Did a fantastic job. The real details are in the individual project reports from the different entities, the different partners that were involved. So I strongly recommend that you go there if you want to get some more detailed information. We can answer a few questions here, but the really detailed stuff is in those reports. So looking at the questions that we have, what was the estimated economic value of improved water quality for Menominee or the Red Cedar Basin? And in that portion of the report that Landon talked about, there are several different economic estimates in there. There's one that talks about the value of a home related to water quality. There's a couple other ones when looking at possible data from and kind of modeling if the water quality was better and more people hung around and said in surveys that they would hang around and probably spend more money and spend more time in the watershed. There was one figure that said basically $53 million in total economic effect and approximately $4.3 million in state and local tax revenue annually would be injected into the watershed. Another scenario that was run looking at jobs and labor income and total value estimated about 13 million of added economic effect and an additional 1.1 million in state and local tax revenue annually. So you can get some more detail on those reports again at the link that's listed there. I don't know did you have anything else to add on that, Landon?
No, and I would just echo what you said about the report, because in the report, they mentioned that some of the economic analysis was ran for specific communities or specific lakes. And so, we couldn't provide that detail here in the summary, obviously, but yeah, like if you go to that report, then you may see, that some of that was very specialized to a specific community or lake, but and it might have the information that you're looking for, or at least let you know what the inputs are. So if you wanted to try to conduct your own kind of assessment, but that's all I would add.
Okay. Next question, do you have data on stream miles in an easement program? I know that Landmark Conservancy handles a lot of that kind of work in this part of the state. And I know that they do have a few fairly new easements within the Red Cedar. But I don't know if you have information beyond that, Landon?
I do not know.
Okay, so I would, contact Landmark Conservancy. They should be easy to find on the internet. They might have some more information about exactly how much land is in easements. Next question, how does the average citizen take part in water quality assessment of the basin? I live in the Hay River watershed, and I've been interested in working with folks to monitor our watershed water quality. Are there databases available for this monitoring? You can actually get involved with becoming a citizen monitor. The WAVE program, the Water Action Volunteers program. WAVE is coordinated by Peggy Compton. If you look up Water Action Volunteers in Wisconsin, you can get some more information on getting training to become a citizen monitor. And you would then be taking data at points that you choose to take and uploading that data to a website. And that data can actually be used if it's quality controlled. It can actually be used to help us figure out water quality information for the basin. So WAVE or Water Action Volunteers, the WAVE program in Wisconsin would be able to help you out with some more information in that regard.
I would add to that too that I really love the DNR's surface data water viewer. So that's just an online map of all the water resources. And so again, I think it's great as a citizen to go in and, okay, you can go into where you live and you can actually click on the different water resources on that map, the surface water data viewer, and it'll show you all the research that's been done about that water, what we know and understand based on the most recent studies or reports. And then you can kind of see, okay, here are some of the key issues or concerns. And again, I feel like the DNR does a good job of attaching the latest, findings of research on certain waterways into that map. So it's easily to, find. And as you click on it, you can pick up, have that information pop up and you can read about it. So.
Next question, what LiDAR data set was used for this analysis? What's your comment on that, if you can, Landon?
Yeah, I know because Barron County's was older. It wasn't recent. So I want to say maybe it was in, 5 years or more old. I know that they need to do another flyover. And I think it was the same for Dunn County, just for the timing that I think that we were using, early 2000, maybe mid 2000s LiDAR data. I would have to confirm with them, but because we didn't take the data from them and then deliver it to Army Corps, they worked out an arrangement through some kind of file FTP or file sharing to share that information. But I can certainly go back and look, and it would probably be in those reports, the date and year, but I want to say it was, mid 2000 would have been the data sets, because I think Dunn has updated it since then. And I know Barron hasn't, but I don't think it was, it wasn't pre-2000. I know that is. So.
Okay, next question. What is the hope of getting real-time water quality assessment stations? Iowa has over 70 solar-powered water quality portable stations that send information every 5 minutes to a central area to give real-time data year-round. Those are expensive. We do have some collection sites that are not every 5 minutes, but they are collecting data. DNR would have more information about the specifics of that. I'm not sure that there are any sites in the Red Cedar that are giving data every 5 minutes on that kind of a time scale. But we do have regular collections, regular sites that are being monitored. And as I said, those kind of automated stations that can collect samples and send water quality data on a regular basis like that are expensive, and resources are hard to come by oftentimes, but it's certainly something that the partnership is looking to do when possible, if we can get more monitoring stations set up. And then we're just about done here, but the last comment that somebody made is, are we making progress? And I'd say yes. Bill James established in his data collection that less of a load reduction is needed than what was needed in the analysis that was done back in the 90s. We're seeing more changes to different land management practices, cover crops, no-till farming. We're seeing more nutrient management plans in the watershed. The city of Menominee is doing a fantastic job of minimizing their runoff. We're seeing cities like Cumberland doing a wonderful job of minimizing runoff into the lakes up there at the very top of the watershed. So we are making progress. It's slow. It's going to, as I said, the 10-year plan we have in place is only that the goal is only to accomplish not even half of what we need to do. That's how long a time this is going to take. So it's a slow process, but we're getting there. It's going to take some time. And with that, we are at our time. Thanks so much, Landon. Thanks for being here and presenting. The next event, we're on a 15-minute break now. The next event is coming up at 11:30, a keynote presentation from Adam Reimer. Hopefully you'll tune in for that. And then there's some more breakout sessions this afternoon, and then Tia Nelson will be doing another keynote later today. So thanks so much for being here at the conference, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Dan.